trust everybody had a good National Day holiday and are fresh and eager to hear our speaker talk about AI in sustainability. I think without further ado, let us get into the conversation. Thanks, Hasan, a lot for your time. I think it's a pleasure. We've been discussing for the last half an hour. It's been very interesting. You know, last year we saw COP28 and the tremendous success and the achievements out of the COP, and many of the landmark agreements that were achieved, whether it was tripling of renewable energy targets, doubling of energy efficiency. And right now we are in the midst of the COP season. COP29 just got concluded in Baku. We have COP16 going on in Riyadh. I know you spent a lot of days in COP29 in Baku. What were some of your key takeaways? Where do you think we have made progress? Where do you see some challenges still around decarbonization and sustainability?
Buenos dias, guten Morgen, salam alaikum to all distinguished guests. And Eid al-Ittihad Mubarak to our brothers and friends in the audience. Mr. Adnan, so at the Conference of Parties 29 in Baku, I was actually with Mr. Al-Zubi, and there were 5 key takeaways. The first one being the National Collective Quantified Goal, the NCQG. So the funding that's going from developed countries to developing countries now is 3 times the amount that was committed in the 90s, now to 300 billion per annum. The second one being around the role of carbon markets, so Article 6, and the transparency requirements of Article 6 and the Paris Carbon Crediting Mechanism, the PCCM, as well as the need for each country to have their own national registries, and the UAE already has been doing a lot of work on that. The third one was a renewed focus from COP28 on the renewable energy transition, which was led by His Excellency Dr. Sultan. And I think we need to work a lot more on that. And the most important being Article 10. This was something that was new, which is the role of technology transfer between developed countries and developing countries. And particularly in that, now using real-time data for quantifying, measuring your emissions, and then decarbonizing across enterprises and the public sector.
Thanks a lot for sharing your insights. And I think the last point, especially on technology, I think that's an interesting addition to the COP declaration and the COP statements that were made. And we all know, right, despite all the efforts that are being made, the carbon emissions are hitting new records every year. We still have a long way to go. General consensus is we will not hit the Paris Agreement on 1.5C, but technology has a key role to play if we were to abate many of these emissions. And especially when it comes, like you mentioned, AI and other emerging technologies. Where do you see the role of AI? Where do you see real-life applications beyond the hype cycle of AI? And where do you see some of the greatest levers to be delivered if we have to meet our sustainability and decarbonization targets?
So whenever, from a first principles approach, whenever there is you have a vast amount of data and you want to drive value in decision making, then artificial intelligence as an underlying technology stack has a key role to play. And as you know, we've moved from the industrial age to the information age. Hence, the other economic model around technology is when you want to drive value behind economic scarcity. So, and that is obviously then blockchain can drive a lot of value. Speaking specifically about artificial intelligence, there are 5 ways. Machine learning models such as random forest, time series analysis, autoregressive integrated moving averages are all good in when you take past behavioral data sets and trends and you give value addition. So that can be in terms of predicting your enterprise emissions, your national emissions trajectory, to detecting data anomalies. The second is when it comes to when you're looking to create optimizations within your value chain, within your reduction strategies. And specifically in optimizations, genetic algorithms, quadratic programming are key. And these help you, for example, decide a capital efficient way between whether you're going to give 1 day work from home for all the employees, or whether you're going to put solar on your plant. Then the third one is around natural language programming, everyone's favorite, OpenAI, and that's great for or large language models other than OpenAI. And what's great there is when you're looking to take structured text and give inferences based on that structured text, such as developing your enterprise's your enterprise emissions report, to helping with FAQs and creating knowledge base. And the last one is what is the most cutting edge, is around generative AI. And this is something that is where you take existing data and you start synthesizing data based on past data. So synthesis is like, for example, taking pictures and creating new imagery that is not real, but looks real. A great example of this use case is, for example, is NVIDIA Omniverse, who are also Ahya's partners. And what NVIDIA Omniverse does is it allows you to model everything from climate scenario to weather patterns, to being able to create any kind of, model any kind of project, mega project, and seeing how it would play out and what the climate aspects and ratios would be.
Maybe let me take a little bit of your tech speak into business cases that we have seen across in the energy value chain, right? So if you look at the spectrum of the value chain of the energy generation to consumption, if you look at generation, right, if you look at renewable energy, we are seeing a lot of use of AI in siting of optimal sites for solar generation. We've seen use of AI in terms of prediction of solar energy and optimizing the generation out of it, producing it into the grid. We are also seeing AI being used on the grid side, optimizing the grid management, demand side management. We see a lot of use of AI use cases when it comes to energy management systems. There are companies like Octopus Energy in the UK that has an AI-based platform that basically brings in distributed sources of energy into an integrated manner. From your experience, what you have seen around is, are these necessarily generating economic value or impact? And if so, are you seeing some pockets that are more attractive than others?
So from a practical business case point of view, you're absolutely right. So the first 3 use cases are great for reducing costs and reducing manual workloads. You don't need to hire as many people to do any of the functions. And then the latter ones, such as generative and optimization models, which you refer to, which Octopus or Celonis in the European Union do, they're great for adding value. So things that human minds cannot infer, being able to do that. I'll give a small example of something that we tested. So the process of greenhouse gas accounting, everyone's familiar with. And you take activity data and you multiply it by an emission factor. Now, the problem is that in the Middle East, other than in the Emirates, there's 100 emission factors. In Saudi, there's 8. In Egypt, there's 5. We don't want to. So you need to go and tag activities to emission factors. Humans do this. I mean, data scientists and climate scientists from Berkeley, Harvard, et cetera, do this at an average accuracy of 50%. We tested 4 AI models, and they do it at 83%. So, and then the climate scientist still has to approve. So now you're not looking at a team of 100 or 200 to do greenhouse gas accounting. You have one. The model does it for you because the one person just has to approve so that there is still some human engagement and it's not just machine learning.
Clear, and I think thanks a lot for that elaboration. I think one of the concerns also we've observed that while we want to transition towards a cleaner world, and we know that puts significant strain on minerals and rare earth metals and other elements that need to be digged up. We want to make sure that the journey itself is not dirty, right? Or the journey itself is clean in order to reach to our clean ambitions. And you touched upon blockchain a bit, and there is, it always, whenever the term blockchain comes up, there is a lot of polarizing views on it. Beyond the hype of blockchain, are you seeing actual use cases or actual implementation, especially when it comes to the supply chain and other elements of the transition?
Absolutely. So, as we all know, in the digital age, economic scarcity is driven by creating value from things, and decentralized finance or blockchain is the best way to do it. The three particular ways in which this works, and supply chain being one of them, is being able to collect data and being able to give smart contracts based on your supply chain. The second one is in carbon credits, so in voluntary emission reductions or compliance emission reductions. You use blockchain to be able to drive transparency, which is a big lag, or transparency and integrity in carbon markets. And then the third one is around, again, taking your supply chain again and digitizing it, using blockchain to give smart contracts for it. Again, I'm not a blockchain specialist. I'm a chemical engineer, and I practice artificial intelligence, but that's my understanding of it.
Thank you very much for that. And I tend to agree with you. I think beyond the hype of blockchain, I think there are some very concrete use cases that help ensuring that the journey towards decarbonization itself is sustainable. And we've seen some very practical use cases, many of them that you highlighted. Coming back a bit to AI, right? I mean, if you look at studies and if you look at the analysis done, it is widely expected that the AI economy will have an impact anywhere between $2 to $7 trillion global impact by 2030. UAE has been at the forefront of this. It's one of the rare countries that has a minister of AI, and they have made massive strides over the last few years in adopting this technology. What are you seeing from a private sector perspective or from an industry perspective, the role of UAE, the role of the government in enabling adoption of AI, especially when it comes to the energy transition?
So you're absolutely right that the Emirates is the home for innovators and gives tremendous zeal and impetus to entrepreneurs like us, because they make some of the best decisions and execute very fast. If we start off first with the policy frameworks, I know that Arthur D. Little advised on the UAE net zero strategy. By 2050, the Emirates is the first, and inshallah will be the first, to be net zero in the entire Middle East, and one of the top 10 in the world with that target. In terms of progress, we'll come to that after the second policy framework, which is around the UAE energy strategy, which focuses on everything from green mobility, electric vehicles, to lowering the grid emission factor, which is already pretty low at 0.55 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour, to 0.27. That would make it the lowest in the world. The third being the National Climate Change Plan from the Ministry of Climate Change of the Emirates. And the National Climate Change Plan starts off with managing your greenhouse gas emissions. It is the only country which has developed localized and made public localized emission factors under that, and finishes off with investing in innovation and AI and through advanced technology. So that's a part of the climate change plan. It's not a separate agenda item. And then the fourth one being your national determined contributions. So the Emirates is the only country in the region, and one of the only in the world, that has revised its NDCs 3 times, as we know. And they stand today at 40% of business as usual. That's a 119 million ton reduction. 40% is a huge number. And of course, if you look at how much of the local energy industry has transitioned to renewables, they're already in the forefront. Second part around AI. So it's extremely cool to have a minister for AI in the Emirates who's 34 and an AI graduate, local graduate as well. So that's, again, very unique that someone under 30 gets to lead a ministry and advise the government. Second to that, it's the only country that I know of that has not 1, not 2, but maybe 3 or 4 sovereign funds, starting off by Mubadala, ADQ, AIQ, and development companies, AIQ, and so on. And then where they don't, they are, again, it's not an issue to partner. So international holding company will go and invest in Microsoft and have a chair of board meeting in Abu Dhabi on Microsoft. And then they'll pick up Amazon Web Services and create the first net zero cloud data center in the UAE for the region, so that Ahya's mission is to help enterprises transition to net zero. So most of our work happens on the cloud, and the only place we can host it is, because we want to have a local and our enterprises want to keep the data locally, is in the Emirates. We can't do that in Saudi, in Egypt, and in other places. And then the last one being that in terms of big, large enterprises, you look at the private sector, you look at the banking sector. So at COP28, we won an award from the Central Bank of the UAE, which is a competition run by every bank, Emirates NBD, Mashreq, everyone supported it. We then got a contract from Bank of International Settlements to build AI and data science models for financed emissions and portfolio emissions and measuring those. Now, coming specifically to, let's pick up Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. And, I'm saying this in his absence. Due to his ill health, he was supposed to be here on the panel, Mr. Ibrahim Al-Zubi, the Chief Sustainability Officer of ADNOC. Every 2 quarters, he launches a new fund and a new development company. Just this week, last week, 10 days ago at COP, he announced an 80 billion fund called XR8. It's focusing specifically just $80 billion for AI in climate change. So, and the same with, whether it's Aqua Power, Diwa, one of your partners, Dubai Holding, so many funds in there. I think the only challenge is taking climate beyond risk to an innovation opportunity, and that capital that already exists at the sovereign fund level and at the government level to trickle down to venture fund managers and then onto the portfolio. There's still a lag in that, and there's a lot of, one has to have in climate change, as you know, sir, you have to have a short-term pessimistic, long-term optimistic view, and then you can make an impact.
Indeed, I think in terms of ambition and in terms of execution of these ambitions laid out by the likes of ADNOC and DIVA and the Ministry of Climate Change, I think we've seen tremendous progress in the last, I would say 2-3 years. It has accelerated, but it even started way before, right? 5-7 years. I know before the AI cycle, DIVA was already working on a completely renewable energy powered data center, right? The green data center. And this is now becoming more and more of a trend. Let's take the flip side of AI, right? Play a little bit of devil's advocate here. We know the tremendous strain AI puts on the energy demands, the energy ecosystem, even water, for example, the cooling for the data centers. And this is becoming a serious concern. I think the power market and the energy players are caught a bit surprised by the enhancing demand, and they're not ready yet. And you can see technology players trying to intervene into the market by trying to resurrect nuclear, trying to go into renewables themselves. So, with the ever-increasing demand, how do you ensure that the benefits of AI significantly outweigh the pressure it puts on the energy system, which is not yet clean or green, right? It'll probably take some years to get there. So where is the balance, and how does one ensure that the benefits outweigh the drawbacks?
So I think the balance, or tawazun, is created through using a multitude of different approaches. For data centers, and so data centers, there's a lot of said, but globally AI, blockchain, everything combined takes less than 3%, 3 to 5% of global energy usage. And yes, nuclear is great, but then the fundamental costs of batteries has decreased a lot. So why not go to solar? Why not go to wind? Why not go to biofuels? Again, those are better, more climate-friendly alternates and options. And at the same time, because they also create a path for climate financing through voluntary carbon markets, you can you can de-risk your project by, if your project meets the conditionalities of permanence, additionality, no double counting, then the voluntary carbon markets, and where COP29 or the UAE's national policy for carbon exchanges launched in March, as a decreed in March, is already there. So I still think that renewable energy is the way to go for powering all forms of data centers. And yeah, and I think the Emirates has a key role to play, and Ahya is proud to be a part of that story.
Thank you very much. Conscious of time, I know we are up. We could continue this for the next half an hour or so, but I don't know if there is a time to take a question from the audience, or shall we wrap it up here? All right, so maybe we'll take one question from anyone, if there is. No? I guess in that case, thank you. Oh, no, there is a question.
We talked about data centers, and we talked about how AI can actually, on the opposite side, is there a way that AI can enable more efficient data centers? The other side of the equation.
So optimization algorithms are the way to do that. For example, genetic programming, quadratic programming, or linear algorithms. These are just ways of utilizing data. And what you can do is you can look at how much energy usage is required optimally and track that from renewable sources. The other way is using simple concept, and from your engineering background, you would know about the concept of heat transfer. So if you were to immerse these data centers in water, and they produce heat, and that in chain heats water, and that can be supplied to the grid, or using some form of heat exchange and heat transfer, and then using that to power this data center. And there's a lot happening in this in Europe and in cooler geographies. I think.
Yeah, I think one concrete example, I know that Google has used AI optimization models for the consumption of power and water in their data centers. And if I'm not mistaken, they have reduced water consumption by 40% by optimizing the cooling of the data centers. So there are use cases that have been implemented already where AI models can help reduce the power and water consumptions in these power-hungry data centers, for sure. All right, Salaal, thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and hopefully you'll continue the discussion offline, but thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure hosting you on this panel.
Thank you, Mr. Merhaba, and thank you for your time and great questions as well.